Again, welcome to Kiwanis Cafe, sponsored by the Michigan District of Kiwanis. My name is Sue Peterson, for those I have not met, but it's great to see so many people with us today. I'm actually the chair for leadership education in Michigan with a very vibrant team of trainers who work with me, who help set up this type of stuff. And we actually host the first Saturday of every month. Unless it's a holiday, we are hosting new member orientation or new member onboarding that will be focused on Kiwanis International, and we'll have a Michigan district, slant to it, but everybody is welcome to join us for that. And then we are going to start hosting these Kiwanis Cafes on the third Saturday of the month. We'll probably skip December as I looked at the calendar. It's probably too close to the holidays for many people, but you never know because we're all kind of working from home, right? And with the CDC and all the stuff that's out there, many of us will be home and not going anywhere, but it's great to have you all with us. And I want to introduce today Melissa McMann, who is the Kiwanis Youth Specialist at Kiwanis International. Melissa's been with us for a couple years, and I will turn it over to her and let her talk about Kiwanis Youth Protection. Again, as we did with our earlier presentation, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll also invite her to answer questions at the end of the program. But Melissa, thank you for being with us on Saturday, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Sue. I appreciate your invitation, and it's great to get to see faces that I often talk to on the phone or have email with Sheila and Larry and Nancy. So what we're going to talk about today is Kiwanis Youth Protection policies and then how we put those in practice. So one thing, Sue, I do want to say, I keep getting the admit into the waiting room. And so I want to make sure that I don't hold up anybody.
You can skip that. I'll take care of it. Sorry.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that I don't hold anybody up. But a little bit about myself. So I actually only joined Kiwanis in January. And I then by March, I was working at home. So I am still getting to know even my coworkers, but I've actually joined the Fishers Kiwanis Club here in Indiana. I'm on the north side of Indianapolis, and we're trying to do a lot like what you guys are trying to do, virtual fundraisers and food drives as well. But when we're talking about youth protection today, we're going to talk about the policy, the practice, what Kiwanis is doing. But first of all, I would love to hear in the chat if you could write, if you are, I know we have Sheila Moore, who is the Youth Protection Manager for Eastern Canada and the Caribbean. If you are an advisor, or tell me which Key Club you're an advisor for, or Builders Club, or Action, or CKI. That kind of helps me get to know my audience and how I can focus on certain talking points. And this presentation, as Sue said, is going to be recorded, and I do have this PowerPoint. I am putting it up. There's a version on our Kiwanis Youth Protection website, but I am putting a shorter 30 slide. So first of all, why does youth protection matter? Within the Kiwanis family, our youth programs, we have over 335 youth that are actually members. And that is not including all the thousands of youth that are served either through our service projects or in our communities, through local Easter egg hunts or pancake breakfasts that we're in contact with. And so we as Kiwanis members and as a leading premier service organization want to make sure that we are informing our volunteers with how to protect youth in their care. We have so many youth that we come in contact with. And a few statistics that that you may be aware of or not aware of is that 85% of child abuse victims, they never report their abuse. And oftentimes that's because they know who their abuser is, whether that's a trusted adult, someone who is, and when we talk about, I also want to give a trigger warning. So anyone who does have, we're going to talk about sexual abuse, child abuse, and how we can prevent those and look out for those types of abuse and how we can keep our children safe physically, mentally, emotionally as we are raising them up and becoming leaders in our communities. But again, those abuse victims often, they know and love and trust the adults. And the immediate effects of sexual abuse often include depression, anxiety, aggression, self-harm, and long-term effects may include poor physical and mental health. So that's another factor in why talking about abuse is so important, because our youth members who we are serving in our K-Kids, in our Key Club, may have been victims of abuse, but we also want to make sure that we're looking out so that it doesn't happen again. And unfortunately, you might have seen in the news lately about the number of cases with the Boy Scout instances. The Boy Scouts is a great organization, but we want to make sure that Kiwanis is not in the news in that regard when it comes to like the USA Gymnastics, where there have been cases of sexual abuse and no one reported or no one talked about it. So that's why our International Board of Trustees has continued to make this an emphasis and continue to put dollars for training and different resources behind talking about youth protection. And I will say, one of the reasons why we included the suicide statistics about being the second leading cause of child and adolescents in the United States also has to do with not only those youth who may be abused in a sexual manner, but also the bullying and the peer pressure and Generation Z, the current students who are in high school and college. There was a Pew Research study done about 2 years ago saying that Generation Z is the most stressed out generation for a variety of different factors. So we are seeing our students self-reporting to other students and other in clubs at the international trustee level, and we want to equip our students with resources and tell them about youth protection too. And so I do this training at the Key Club International Convention and the CKI Convention, and include students if they are interested. So not only talking to the adult Kiwanian members, but also talking to the youth as well. So our main goals with Kiwanis and the youth protection goals are to protect youth members from predators, empower and educate adult members with best practices when working with youth, and provide youth with positive skills and tools to design and inspire and engage them. Our fundamentals is multifaceted approach to youth protection with our service leadership programs. You may hear me say the acronym SLP. What that means is our service leadership programs. And that includes not only our Kiwanis youth programs for students that are under the age of 18, but then also our college students with Circle K International and our Action Club. We include those in our policies because those are also vulnerable populations, and we want to make sure that they're also protected. So for a quick and easy way for you to think about the main tenets of our approach is accessible and high quality training. Trying to do this training in a variety of different ways, whether it is through Zooms, in person, and providing resources on our website. Background checks and beyond, and then culture of care. Our Kiwanis.org/youth protection website, so I'd ask everybody to write that down, is a great resource, and we are continuing to update that. As Larry and I were talking before we got started, putting the webinars, some of the recordings that I've done of this presentation on this website. If you actually, the blue squares are actually buttons and they take you to other pages. If you click on the policies and procedures button, it takes you to a PDF document of what our policies are. If you have questions about background checks, how to get one, and what are the frequently asked questions, you can click on that button. And then YP training stands for Youth Protection Training. And I have another screenshot. This is what it takes you to. And so this actually has a PowerPoint district youth protection managers, or even club. Maybe you have a chairperson or a committee person in youth protection who does your annual club training. They can find the presentation on this website as well. And then we have some frequently asked questions about our youth protection e-learning courses through Presidium. So to get started in talking about policy, education, we have an education policy related to youth protection, and every Kiwanis member is expected to inform and educate its members. So as we were talking before, we want all the members of your club to be aware of what our policies and procedures are. And this is the 2-page document that I was referencing to Alan. If he, or I think it was maybe David, could take back to your club and share. And it basically walks through all these different slides that I am going to be talking about. There's also an opportunity for you to learn about youth protection or have ask questions at a your district convention or your midwinter convention. There's typically usually a youth protection training or workshop. And then as well as your local youth protection manager. So I know Sheila, we've talked, and she's able to do trainings for her district. And I know Michigan has a youth protection manager able to do their trainings as well. And one of the reasons why we want to make sure that we're educating our members about the policies is because they do change. So last year, Michelle Studi Campbell, who is my predecessor, she's actually my boss and the executive director of youth protection programs. Youth programs. She was in youth protection last year. She reached out to Presidium Inc., which is a 25-year nonprofit training service provider researcher on child abuse and prevention. And they did an assessment and looked at our policies and procedures and talked with our board. They did an assessment and interviews, and so we've done some enhancements to fill in those gaps where Kiwanis may have had some gaps in our multifaceted approach. And one of those is having training, talking about abuse, talking about what are signs of sexual abuse that we might see in our students when they're in a Builders Club meeting, or what kind of things that need to be reported. So Presidium, Kiwanis, so Kiwanis actually pre-enrolled all of 6,000 of our advisors, of our SLPs, as well as our district youth protection managers, risk managers, so that they could take these e-learning courses. They're about 15 minutes per course, and it's a video. I would also say that if you are in Boy Scouts or you are in, I think, YMCA maybe, they also contract with Presidium and do these trainings. They're very well done. And it's basically to kind of give you like preventing sexual activity between adults, or social media safety, or adolescents I meant, or social media safety. Like, what are different types of abuse that may affect our youth in Key Club or Builders Club. Once these courses are completed, they're good for 2 years. I actually have a report that I get on who's completed, and I can share that with folks as well. And then when it comes to chaperones, so our chaperones are also now required, that's a policy change this year, that they also complete the Presidium e-learning courses. There's about 3 of them. So advisors have about 6 courses and chaperones have 3. For anyone who is interested, who's not an advisor, who's not already pre-enrolled, if you would be interested and you wanted to take the course, so maybe you're a committee person on youth protection, or maybe you're in a risk committee for your club and you're interested, you can log into your Kiwanis Connect portal and click on the Create Presidium Account hyperlink. I have the screenshot in the lower left corner. And this will automatically send you credentials to set up an account. If you're someone who, we actually launched this in February, and we did, a lot of folks didn't get the email with their login credentials. It went to their spam folder because it was being sent from Presidium instead of Kiwanis. So if you don't have a login, all you have to do is email me at youthprotection@kiwanis.org. We also have Presidium's support information as well. You can contact them for their, to get your login credentials. Our policy on background checks. Kiwanis requires clubs to have clear criminal background checks for any club member serving as an advisor to any service leadership program. And as I said, those are Circle K, Key Club, Builders Club, K Kids, and Action Club. And I will say, one thing that I've heard recently as we've tried to really enhance our compliance about background checks is, well, Melissa came to our meeting and we needed someone to put down, we sponsor a club and we need someone, so we're just going to put Melissa down as an advisor. As leaders, I would really encourage you to tell your clubs and your club secretaries and your presidents that when they sign up to be an advisor, there are requirements. And one of those requirements is having a background check that is clear and current. So background checks are good for 2 years. So while that advisor is serving in that role, they need to have a current background check. And also the training requirements, as we just said, having that youth protection training, as well as knowing the policies and procedures. So I've heard recently about saying, oh, well, that's just a liaison. They didn't know that they needed a background check. You know, make sure that you're sharing that if you're saying you're an advisor and you're going to work with your local Key Club, that there are certain requirements. And then when it comes to chaperones, so chaperones may be a parent of a youth who is going to go on an overnight event. Maybe it is a spouse to an advisor. All chaperones must be 21 years or older, and whether they're a Kiwanis club member or not, if they're going to work with the students off school premises, so if it is a teacher and they're going to work off school premises or at an overnight, maybe an overnight retreat or an overnight district Key Club convention, the chaperone now is required to have a background check. So previously we left this up to the districts, and there were a lot of districts that were having those overnight chaperones background checked. And so we made it an international policy. And I will say, when we talk about chaperones, I want to be specific that it is, we have a ratio of 1 to 10 students. So if we have a Key Club that is going on an overnight trip, that it is 1 adult. Well, here, I'm jumping ahead of myself. We'll just say that the event is, it's a car wash in McDonald's, and it's off school premises. We want to make sure that there are adults there that have a background check, and that it's a 1 adult to a 10 student ratio. So teachers who have background checks through their school, those are sufficient. Yes, so Larry, is there a report for districts of who has had a background check completed? Yes, I can run those for you. Unfortunately, we don't have it set up for district secretaries to run that themselves, but district secretaries can check and see which advisors in their district that are assigned to SLP clubs have a background check. So if you're a district secretary, you can run reports. So back to our chaperones. Chaperones should, like I said, take those 3 courses through the Presidium and also review our policies and procedures. When it comes to overnights, we do ask that there be, by adult chaperones, the 1 to 10 ratio, that there's 1 male for every 10 male students and 1 female for every up to 10 female students. So that means if there are 15 females, you actually need 2 female adult chaperones. And a chaperone can be a chaperone and an advisor, like both of those who have a background check. So somebody asked, how can that be properly maintained to ensure integrity in the system? Going back to the background checks, in our system, in our Kiwanis system, we only we get a clear date from our vendor. So we just get the date that it has passed. So I passed my background check January 6, 2020. That is the number that is in our system. So that's the number, or that's the date that we look at on the 2 year. So only for registered advisors. KI, yes, KI does send a follow-up 29 days prior to the expiration date. Yes, that's great. When it comes to reporting guidelines, if you see any youth that have any troubling behavior, any illegal behavior, whether it is at an event or even if it's following an event and you hear about it, if you're an advisor or you're working with youth, we do ask that you contact local law enforcement if it is unlawful and get that investigation started right away, and not to wait on it and you know, wait 2 weeks until you have your next meeting. We want to make sure that we are reporting, especially when it's an abuse situation or if there is a sexual harassment that you hear of a student harassing another student. We want to get the police involved as quickly as possible. If it isn't unlawful and it is just a policy violation, we do say contact, the local personnel, those organizers of the event who are on site, contact them as well. And then also, I always say get another adult involved. So if you are an advisor, call your district administrator, get them involved so that you don't feel like you're the only one that is investigating or feeling like this is all on your shoulders. And we also don't want to feel like that the troubling behavior, there may be certain things within your district bylaws about conduct unbecoming for Key Club students. So if there is a policy violation, know what your district's policies are on that. In one area that we launched a 1-800 helpline, and this is for all Kiwanis members and our youth members. So if any youth feel like they don't feel comfortable reporting or don't know which police department or law enforcement who they should call, if they call this 1-800 number, it is actually staffed by professionals at Presidium who have been trained in counseling and therapy and crisis intervention. So it's staffed 24 hours, and they can then contact the law enforcement depending on what state or international as well. This number does work in Canada. We have tried it. Fortunately, the calls, we've received about 4 calls this year, and they've been policy related. So knock on wood, they haven't been abuse related. They've just been uncomfortable situations, and the youth didn't know how to handle it and didn't feel comfortable going to their advisor. And so we got districts involved and talked to the local clubs and got the advisor, and we at Youth Protection at Kiwanis International, we do staff the calls and they are recorded, but we try and handle those at the district as much as possible. Policy has been effectively changed to say Canada uses local policing authorities where they live. Yes. Did I answer that right? And I appreciate those of you who are answering the questions in the chat. Sometimes the chat goes really fast as I'm talking. When it comes to social media, we always say that the best bet is connecting with youth on their youth club page, and not individual youth, and becoming besties with youth that are in your key club. We want to make sure that all our posts are professional and public facing, so that the students the students aren't taking advantage of you, and you're not taking advantage of the students or making any kind of predatory type of insinuations, that kind of thing. So we always say treat posts public facing. When it comes to pictures of youth, we know that oftentimes you invite youth to your lunches, and maybe you're giving out a scholarship or a fund, and you want to post that on your social media page, or maybe do a newsletter and post their picture. Just make sure that you have that student's permission, their parent and their guardian permissions, that they can have that. We ask that you don't post pictures on your personal page of students, primarily because with the digital age that we live in and digital footprints, there are, pictures live forever, and there are predators out there, unfortunately, who will prey on knowing where a student goes to school, where a youth, where they go to school and who their name is and that kind of thing. So we always talk about personal information of students, keeping that as a minimum as possible when it comes to the public. And then when it comes to email communication, we say avoid text one-on-one. I know there are some key clubs use different apps, like the WhatsApp app. I would say when it comes to those, making sure that there are more than one adult on them. So always a rule of 3, that there's at least either the parent or a guardian, another adult. When you send out invitations, so we would like to invite the Key Club to come to our luncheon for a holiday, and we would love to get to know the Key Club better, or we want to hear what are the Key Club in our area working on. Make sure that you're including that faculty advisor, that Kiwanis advisor, or even also your club secretary, just so that it's not a one-on-one conversation. Here is a social media scenario. So Pat is a college grad and a former Key Club youth member or youth leader. Pat is a member of the local Kiwanis Club and will be a Key Club advisor. Pat is also a communications and marketing professional. Pat is very enthusiastic about the new role. Pat friends the faculty and students in the club on Facebook. Pat posts photos of the first meeting on Facebook and Instagram, and even creates a Key Club Snapchat filter. What do you do? It all depends. If Pat has the appropriate permissions and waivers from the school and the guardians to post and is using the club page, then that's okay. But if Pat is posting on their own page, then it's not okay. We put together earlier this year, we did have the Key Club and the CKI International conventions online due to COVID. And so we put together some best practices for code of conduct when having virtual meetings. So this isn't in policy, this is more of a best practice that making sure if you are working or if Key Clubs are able to meet virtually. I know some SLP programs are not able to, like the Key Club may meet, but you might not be able to do a Builders Club or a K-Kids. But if you are able to meet virtually, ensuring that the students feel safe in the environment in a virtual meeting, making sure that the students are dressed, reminding them that, no profanity, or making sure that they have appropriate language, appropriate dress, appropriate backgrounds. Things where there's not anything that could be, anyone in the background that is like lurking or, inappropriate posters or that kind of thing. And then also, and I think Zoom has actually changed some of their features, but we always recommend making sure there's a password. So if you are doing a virtual meeting, only giving that link to the students directly, not putting it on a broad site where anyone in the public can access it, and making sure that the students have like a password or kind of locked in. And also just making sure that the students aren't bullying each other and harassing each other in the chat. So sometimes we recommend just closing down the chat. When it comes to transportation best practices, our policy is, best practice is 3 people in a car. So whether that's adults and 2 students, or 2 adults and a whole group of students, at least having 3 people in the car for safety reasons, making sure that you're following your local school and law policies, whether that's regarding speed limits and seat belts. And then also making sure that you have the approvals from parents and guardians. Here's a transportation scenario. So you're a Key Club advisor. You and the club's president and vice president are set to go on a 4-hour car trip across the state to attend a training session and a Key Club meeting. The night before the drive, the club president gets sick and cancels. What do? You find a 3-person. So keeping in accordance with the rule of 3. So you would ask like another member to join. If that's not possible, keep a log of a few key instances or milestones, such as when the trip starts, when it ends. Maybe you call their parents or text the parents and say, hey, I just dropped off Jimmy and I will be there in 5 minutes to drop off Susie. Just maybe having a log, having documentation that this is when things were dropped off, when students were dropped off, and also for safety as far as like the one-on-one situations. That's just really what we're trying to avoid. And I will say, when it comes to medication, possession of prescription and non-prescription medication should only be allowed with written permission. So if you are an advisor and you're on a retreat overnight, or you are at a convention and you have hotel bed checks, making sure that you do have the medical permission slips for students to take, even if it's Advil. Because we don't want to be, I was going to say responsible, the liability for this, kind of falls under our liability insurance, and making sure that we have the written permission from parents and guardians. And there is a standard form when students do go. The Key Club has a form about overnight stays, and I think there's a checkbox on that gives a parent permission. So a little bit more into background checks, I kind of want to dive into that. It looks like I have some different questions, and I will open this up at the end as well. So we talked about all Kiwanis members must have a background check. Advisors, their background check through the school is sufficient when they are on the premises of the school. But if they are going to go to convention, they're going to go to overnight, that's when Kiwanis liability insurance covers them, and they're going to need one of our background checks. We do, for the US and the Canadian members, we do use Safe Hiring Solutions. And, but for, let's see, I guess it's not on here. But for our Canadian residents, we ask that they go to their local police services and get a vulnerable sector check. And then if they can send us either the original, whether that is a paper copy or even a PDF copy. So I know in Ontario, their local police services have actually gone to electronic reporting. And so they only give that to the individuals through PDF. We will accept that now. Also in Canada, there have been some exceptions that we've looked into when the local police service will not provide their vulnerable sector check to anyone outside of Canada. So the ask, is this going anywhere? So in that instance, call me or email me, and we will look at ways that we can try and identify for Canadian residents, because I know that they are a lot different procedures than it comes to in the US. We do have France and Martinique are also similar situations where, and I think the Grand Cayman, where they have to go to their local police service, ask for their background check, and then we ask that you send it in to us. We verify that yes, you did have it, here's the date, and then we put the date in our system, and we send that back to you. So someone asked, is there different policies for Action Club? So I would say for Action Club, we do have the policies for the background check. They are under the SLP, education, and the youth protection. When it comes to transportation, this is primarily 18 and under. But I would say that for Action Club, I think there's some best practices there, and making sure that there are 3 people in the car, making sure that they're, and if you're asking about medication, I would say that I would have to get back to you on that, because I know that they're usually a caregiver who is giving education. Yes, Martinique is part of ECC, but still uses many of France's law, which is civil law, not criminal law statutes. However, because of Martinique following France's law, we've actually looked into their Ministry of Justice, and they will only provide their background check to the individual. And so then the individual had to send us the PDF of the form. So thanks for that, Phil. Earlier this year, the Board of Trustees approved a compliance action plan so that as of September 1st, any advisor who is a Kiwanis member that's an advisor in our system who didn't have a background check, we sent them individual reminders on a monthly basis. We reached out to the districts and asked the district, either youth protection manager or district secretary, to reach out to those clubs who might have had an advisor who didn't have their background check updated. And we worked really hard to try and get as many folks as we could to get in compliance. There were about 1,600 advisors in our role out of 6,000, and they were relieved of their role because they didn't have a background check. Moving forward, anyone who has a background check and it expires, where we notify them 29 days prior to the expiration, and then they have 60 days to renew that background check. And that is more 60 days of initiating and starting it. Once it's processing, if it takes longer than that, we're not going to drop the advisor or relieve them of their role, but we're at a 91% compliance rate right now. I just ran the numbers last week. And so we're still not at 100%, but we know that that's going to be on a rolling basis because not all of our advisors actually have get background checks at the same time. I will say when it comes to background checks, we know that that is not the be all end all for keeping the kids safe. We know that that's a screening tool that can be used to weed out any predators. But education and talking about it and making youth protection on everyone's mind and you know, that is definitely, the education piece is going to be so helpful in trying to protect our youth as much as possible. And I will say again, if you are having a pancake breakfast or an Easter egg hunt, not all of your members need to have a background check. So if you're inviting the Key Club to help with your pancake breakfast and do dishes, because maybe that's a fundraiser for them, if they have their advisor that has a background check or they have their chaperone and it meets that quota of adult to student ratio, then all the other members that are Kiwanis, they don't have to have a background check. Different ways that you can initiate a background check. Again, I said our Canadian residents and Canadian members need to actually go to their local police service. But for US clubs, individually, you can log into your Kiwanis Connect and you can click on background checks button. And there's either a pop-up message that'll send you an email automatically to you, or it might say, your background check doesn't expire for another 3 months. Yes, so Sheila said, I have inquired at the local police department about sending the original hard copy to Kiwanis. They will not send it out of country, but once the copy of the result is in the individual's hands, they can do with it what is required. Thank you, Sheila. Yes. For renewals, if any of you are secretaries of your clubs, you also have the ability under member admin, which is the screenshot on the right side, where there is a little envelope. And if you click the envelope, that can send a background check link to that US member, and they can start the application process. And the application process is basically an online form. You fill it out with your name and date, birth, and it asks a few questions. If you've completed, if you've had any convictions in the past, you can self-report, but then it actually goes and checks the US sex offender registry, national, I think it's maybe even watch list, FBI check, and then there is a state check and then a local check. It does go back 7 years. Safe Hiring Solutions, actually their system interfaces with our system. So you can see on the right-hand side of this screenshot where it says expires 10/29/2021. So that's where it shows like who has a background check and if it's current and when it expires. So with our systems interfacing, it shows up on our secretary dashboards. A new feature that secretaries may come across is if you try and add an advisor and with a new fiscal year and you're not able to add them, you might get a pop-up message saying that they can't be added because they don't have a clear background check. So we do say, send those advisors a link to the background check or contact me at backgroundchecks.kiwanis.org so that we can get them to complete it, and then they can be added on your secretary, on your roster. And so again, for our Canadian residents, if they do have a hard copy, they can mail it to us at Kiwanis International, or if there's a PDF copy, we will accept that if that's the only way that their police service distributes. And then for Caribbean countries, we ask that you send the background checks at Kiwanis. We send individual links. We actually have a Caribbean account. So we absorb, so the cost is $25 for US members, and then for advisors. And then in the Caribbean and even in Australia and Germany, the costs are, there's additional fees, but we absorb the difference with that $25. If your local club, say you sponsor 5 different schools or 5 different SLP clubs in your community, and you would like to go ahead and have pay for those advisors' background checks, you can set up a club account with Safe Hiring Solutions by filling out a simple form, and then your club would get emailed a bill for any of those advisors or members that have completed their background check. Culture of care. So this is our third facet of our program. And this is something new that we've started in the last year. And really focusing on our students and engaging them and training them to become leaders, to look at healthy boundaries. When we talk about healthy boundaries in relationships, whether that is dating relationships or whether that's peer-to-peer relationships and preventing bullying, cyberbullying, internet bullying, and looking at personal boundaries and more. Earlier this year at the Key Club International Convention, we had a speaker, Burton Patterson, who is a director of prevention with our Indiana's Coalition Against Sexual Assault. He did a four workshop training where Key Club attendees could take the 4 workshops, and then they'll be given a facilitator guide, and they can take that facilitator guide and have these hard conversations and kind of go through exercises with their local Key Clubs about preventing bullying and healthy relationships. We also are working with, a part of our culture of care is also providing resources for parents and adults. So we are working with Erica's Lighthouse. They are a nonprofit in Illinois on suicide education and prevention, and they have a parent handbook, and we're working on getting that linked on our website as well, just as resources for those who it might be impacted in your community, or just as far as prevention, especially during these times of COVID when students are isolated and alone. The statistics for suicide have been increasing. But I want to say thank you all very much for all the work that you do, for all of the youth in your communities, for the youth in your clubs. I know that you all are putting in so much time and so much effort, and you're raising up students to be great servants and servant leaders. And so I just want to thank you from Kiwanis International for all that you're doing. And if anyone has any questions that I didn't get answered or that didn't get in the chat feature because it was going so fast, I am happy to answer those questions. You can unmute yourself too.
Thank you, Melissa. I think we got all the questions in there, but I'll go back through and look at them to make sure. But you feel free to unmute yourself. If you've got a question, go ahead and ask Melissa. She can answer that for you. And again, we're still recording, so you will have this information later. Let me see if I can look at our chat here and see. There was one in there about, okay, we talked about action clubs. How far back does a background check go when one is done on an individual?
7 years.
7 years, okay. Other questions?
Oh, and I will say, so this is a shorter presentation. I know I talked a lot, but I actually have more slides on culture of care that I've presented to like the lieutenant governors and so forth, and all the great things that we're doing, and all the progress that we've made in the last year. Like Michelle, my boss, has really done a lot in the last year, as well as Stan, you know, entering into these contracts with Presidium to get the hotline. But one thing I do want to say, there on our website, that youth protection training page, and even on youth protection, if you're a Key Club advisor and you want some materials, we actually have a virtual toolkit in October that was about cyberbullying. So maybe you needed a program for your Key Club for a meeting. On the Kiwanis International website, we have virtual toolkits, and I was really excited that we got our Key Club International diversity trustee, and I think our vice president actually had a conversation with Burton, and they asked questions about bullying and cyberbullying, and they did it in a way for K Kids and Builders Club, if the K Kids and Builders Club wanted to play that conversation or that video as a program. So we're really trying to get our youth involved at that international level, and even like I said, the certified culture of care champions, so that students feel that the Kiwanis is a safe place and that we do care about them. So again, all of you, thank you so much for continuing to show the youth in your community how much you care.
Melissa, we did have a question there from Robert. Wanted to know, what if a child is afraid to go home?
That is a really good question. And I would say that first I would get with the school. So if the child, and maybe you can clarify this, is this someone who is coming to like a Builders Club or K Kids meeting, or is it someone who is at like a larger event? Because I would say that if there was a Key Club student and Builders Club that don't feel comfortable going home, that contact that school's psychologist, contact their administrators. They have protocols in place when it comes to reporting. And I would say, reach out to them on their reporting protocols, because that child may need a safer environment, and there may need to be, child services involved.
Melissa, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we'll be able to see if anybody else puts their hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And here's my contact information if anybody wants. There we go.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry.
That's okay. Robert, did that answer your question?
Yes. The other thing is, I'm like I said, a retired emergency doc, and I'm seeing many instances of abuse. What if a child shows physical signs of abuse but refuses to complain about it?
Well, again, contact that school, because there are mandatory reporting, like when it comes to school, there are mandatory reporting requirements, whether the student reports it or not. School teachers and psychologists or school administrators have to report that. Depending on what state you're in or what country you're in, there are certain reporting laws. And
right. And when do you get the police involved? When do you ask the school to get the police involved?
That's a really good question. So are you saying after you've gotten the school involved or before you've gotten the school involved?
No, I'm saying you're at a function, and a child shows up and they got a slap mark or a bruise on their face, and they don't want anything done, but, the school, it's again, when do you go, when does it get serious enough that you go past the school and you call 911 right at that time?
That's a really good question. Me coming from someone who had worked for DCS, I would probably contact DCS and 911 earlier rather than later, because you never know.
Right.
That second time could be a really dangerous situation. I would probably also have a conversation with the faculty advisor and the. Are you a SLP advisor? Are you?
No, I'm not. I'm a past president of the club.
Okay, because I would definitely say talking to the advisors who will work with that student on a regular basis and asking, but that is a really good question. I would definitely say there are some tips within those Presidium courses about talking to youth about reporting, and they have a little bit more in depth on the signs of abuse and what to do. But
okay,
again,
the other thing is, many of us are healthcare providers, and even though we're not in the role as a healthcare provider, we have a legal obligation to report. You get in more trouble if you don't report. So if you're not a healthcare provider, you don't have that legal obligation. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know if outside of your work environment, whether that obligation continues, but I think it might.
I would say yes. When it comes to reporting related to Kiwanis, that we definitely have that obligation.
Robert, I will tell you that I'm a mandatory reporter. I work for the university, and I'm a mandatory reporter. So in my role, whether I saw it, I would be expected to report.
If it was a Kiwanis situation,
Yep.
yeah. I would get my feeling is I would report and then let things happen as they may. You got to protect the child above all else.
Right. Absolutely.
One of my professors used to say, "Be the dumb, dedicated doctor, and just whatever happens, happens. If you get in trouble, you get in trouble, but you protect the child."
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all very much for letting me be with you this morning. Sue, once again, it's great always seeing you.
Thank you, Melissa. I've been working with you so long that I thought you were here for years.
No, it's only been like 11 months. So.
Wow. Well, that's great that you've been with us, and I can tell you that the work that's been done on this, the Kiwanis Youth Protection, has just been amazing. And I think as a person who sees it from the university side, working with college students who goes through, several hours of training every year on being a mandatory reporter, because of the work that we do with alumni and families and that type of stuff, it's there. We're expected to do that. And even now in this point of virtual, if there's cyberbullying and that kind of stuff, the expectation is still there that we report that. And I'm kind of with you. It's like, I'll report it. If you want to yell at me later, yell at me later. But
and I was actually just on a call, so I know we're being recorded, but I was just on a call earlier this week with the National Alliance of Youth Serving Organizations. And so it's the YUSA, the American Camp Association, and some other, they actually higher education coalition, because higher education, they actually do a lot of youth programming and so forth. And the one thing that came up in that, and I wanted to take it back to all our Kiwanis members, is that you may be that extracurricular activity right now, with students not being able to report to their teachers, with students having, stressed out parents, that you may be their lifeline. You may be the one that they feel comfortable with reporting because they're Zooming with you as an advisor on a monthly basis, or because, you had a good relationship with them before we went virtual. And so I think that, like what Robert was saying, it's very important right now to be mindful that, abuse is happening, and the colleagues at the international or at the national level were saying that because the students aren't in school
Right.
and being able to have teachers or says they're not able to report. So you might be the one that they feel comfortable reporting to.
Right.
So, okay.
Very good. All right. So thank you, Melissa. I'm going to stop recording now.